Salve discipuli. So today is lesson 1.3, the use of verbs. Now, this is like 3 pages worth of notes. And the funny thing is that you really only need to know two small things. So, Mrs. Grace, Magistra Grace, why are you teaching us all of this stuff then? This is just background information. This is something that you are going to be responsible to know when we get all the way out in Unit 3, which is quite a ways off from now. When we're done with nouns, when we're done with adjectives, then you will finally learn everything there is to know about verbs. But we kind of need some verbs in order to use the rest of our cases, right? We've had the nominative case, the subject case, and we've had some basic things to do with it. But now we might actually like to start translating some sentences and using some other cases. And to do that, we need the bare minimum. And the bare minimum is going to be this. Okay. You're going to, over the course of, several lessons until we get to real verbs, you're going to be learning just a few things. Most of the verbs that you'll be learning will end in either T or an NT. And basically, if you see T on the end of your verb, it means that the subject, the person who's performing the action of that verb, is a he, a she, or an it. Now, if you actually have the noun there right in front of you and in front of the verb, you know who the subject is. Okay, and you don't have to worry about it. You just translate your noun and then you translate your verb, just like you would in English, the subject and then the verb. But the cool thing about Latin is if you don't have a noun in front, you don't really need the words he, she, or it. They are built into the ending. Each Latin noun, if you take a look at this little chart here, sorry, each Latin noun, each Latin verb for the different persons, the I, the you, the he, she, it, the we, the y'all, the they, for those 6 different persons, there are 6 different endings, which means each one looks different, which means you don't really need all that extra stuff in front of the verb. You don't need the I, the you, the he, she, it, the we, the all, y'all, the they, because the endings will clue you into who's supposed to be the subject. So Latin is a very condensed language, and these endings contain a lot of information, and it means that you can leave a lot of stuff out that you would have to very carefully state in English, otherwise your listener would be very confused. But for the Romans, it wasn't a problem, right? If they heard a T on the end of their verb, they didn't need somebody to tell them that he, she, or it was the subject, because that was the only possibility. The ones that we are going to be using, okay, are going to be the T and the NT endings. And you will have the verbs in your vocabulary. They will be translated as he, she, or it, and then whatever the verb means, or it would be translated as they, whatever the verb means. So we'll tell you what pronouns they use. It might be helpful for you to recognize right now that these are referred to in grammar as third person. I don't actually want to include the he, she, or it. Third person pronouns. And these types of verb charts, whatever language you take, you'll have to memorize these types of verb charts. You take French, you'd have to memorize this chart. If you took German, you'd have to memorize a chart like this. If you take Spanish, you'd have to memorize a chart like this. So this is something that all languages have, and of course, so does Latin. Now, as we said, English uses at least 2 words to say what Latin does in 1 word. So if all you see is, let me focus only on the ones that we're going to be using. If all you see is laudat, if that is your complete sentence, then you would translate it as he, she, or it praises. If you see laudant, and that's all there is, you would say they praise. Okay. All of those words in English are combined into that one little tiny Latin verb. Now, This is just usually what the basic T-chart will look like when you're asked to memorize verbs. As I said, we are focusing only on this last row right there. And all of our vocabulary entries, they're going to tell you exactly how to translate this. How are we going to use these verbs to help us make sentences with the nouns that we already know? This is where it gets fun. All subject nouns are going to be placed in the nominative case. Nominative is the Latin word, it's based off of, actually I'll say, it's based off of the Latin word for name. Okay, so the word noun in English comes from the Latin word for name. The word nominative case, nominative, comes from the Latin word for name. And name actually comes from the Latin word for name. All three of those, okay, very useful. So if something is the subject noun, remember, is the actor. Okay, so the actor is the subject, the main character of our sentence, right? Think of your sentence as a story, and the subject, I should spell that out, is our main character. And in Latin, they don't call it the subject, they call it the nominative case. Okay. So if our actor is a single thing, we would use the nominative singular ending on that noun. And if that noun, who is our actor, is plural, then we would use the nominative plural ending on that noun. So our verb must agree with the subject noun in person and in number. I said all of our persons are going to be third person. It's either going to be he, she, or it, or it will be they. So we don't have to worry about this right now. Right now, it's all third person. So you do not have to fret about this part. Okay. Number, though, you are going to have to pay attention to. And number, just like in nouns, it's either going to be singular or it's going to be plural. So if your subject noun is singular, your verb would use T. So this is singular. If your subject noun is plural, you use NT. That's not how you say it. I'm spelling it. It's nt if you want me to sound it out. Person means the correct pronoun ending must be used on the verb in agreement with the subject. Number always means singular or plural using this example sentence. Okay, so the sailor is praising. All right. English is kind of obnoxious for right now. Just remember this entire thing is going to be considered your verb, by the way. All right. The subject noun is sailor. He is our actor, right? And the actor, I didn't finish up here. Actually, hold on. Erase, not drawing it very well. Okay, so the actor performs an action. Okay. We'll learn what comes at the end of the arrow later. So our actor is going to perform an action. Our subject is going to perform the action of a verb. The subject noun, the person performing the verb here, is sailor. So sailor is, if you had to think, is sailor he, she, it, or is it they? Well, I'm assuming here, because it says the sailor, we're talking about one sailor. So he's going to be singular. And in this case, it's probably, because we're talking about Roman times, a he. So it's a he, it's singular. And so that means it would be third person singular. All right, so remember, all of the verbs we're learning are third person right now, and your only decision is really whether it's singular or plural. Okay. So praise, right? We had two words in our vocabulary that have to do with praise, and one is laudat, he, she, or it praises, and one is laudant, they praise. So which one would I use in this sentence? I would use the one that is laudat. Why? Because the T is singular, okay? So you'll notice it's from down here. And my subject is a he, we assume. It doesn't really matter if I get the gender wrong in this particular case. So when the subject you are translating contains a separate subject noun, as ours does up here, the sailor is praising, Do not translate the personal pronoun that is built into the Latin verb, okay? You don't need it. It's there for emergency cases when somebody has just forgotten to give you a subject. So when you see the sentence, nauta laudat, when you see nauta laudat, it means that nauta, you'll look at that and you'll recognize, oh, wow, that's got an A at the end. That's a nominative singular ending. So he must be the subject. He's the main character of my sentence, right? So, oops, pen. Nominative singular. And laudat, that means, let's see, it means praise. It has a T at the end, so it's he, she, or it. Hey, my sailor, the subject is a he. So my sailor is praising. That's what he's doing. Okay, that's basically how you translate it. Paying attention to that. Okay, notice, as they said here, we do not say the sailor, he is praising, because that does not sound like good English, does it? No. He, okay, is not needed in this sentence because we were given a subject. So we don't need he as a placeholder in English, which is all the he does in English, is it kind of, it's like somebody coming in and holding your place in line until you actually get there. That he is holding in English the subject's place in line until a subject actually arrives. Think of it that way. There will be things called transitive and intransitive verbs. That's basically where, so an actor transitive, which are the most fun kind, and they're the kind we'll be dealing most with. So is when your action comes through and it affects something here. Who is it actually acting on? That's going to be your transitive. Actually, I'll just draw a little arrow. So this is a transitive. Intransitive refers to you have an actor and he does an action and then, but it kind of stops there. Okay. You know, it's something like the boy runs, you know, it's not really affecting anybody but himself. So it doesn't, the verb, the action just kind of stops with him versus the, the boy throws the ball. Okay. There, he's actually performing the action onto something. So we're going to talk about transitive and intransitive verbs, but once again, this is not something that you are going to be held accountable for. I will point it out every time it happens because it's helpful to think about that when you're trying to write Latin sentences. There are, though, and you will sort of have to be responsible for this. I should change the notes because it should be in third person instead of in first person. So there are going to be three ways to translate the Latin present tense. Latin, as I said, it's a very economical language. Okay, I'm going to do laudat up here. All right, so laudat. When they wanted to say that somebody was praising in the present, right now, they just had one word for it, right? He, she, or it, and then praises, laudat. English, on the other hand, is an absolute mess, and we have three different ways to describe somebody performing an action at the current time. The first one is very simple, and I'm just going to use he here. He, because it's fewer letters. He praises. That's simple, right? So we call this the simple translation in English. This is the simple present tense in English. Then there's another way you can do it, a little fancier, what's called the continuous translation, which means that he is actually at this moment in the process of and still working through it, his praising. It's ridiculous. All right. This is something you don't actually use that often in English, but it exists. So this, I'm going to say he is praising. And so this would be the continuous translation. And then finally, there's like one where you want to put a lot of emphasis and say, no, really, really, this is happening. Can you believe it? And that's called the emphatic. So he does praise. Really, I'm not lying. And so this is the emphatic translation. You may choose any one of these three when you are translating Latin sentences. Most Latin students stick with the simple and try not to get too fancy. They're too busy struggling between which one is the subject and which one is the going to be the direct object, which is next lesson. And so they don't really think about anything else. But you are welcome to use the continuous translation in English or the emphatic translation. You'll notice that when we write Latin sentences, when we're given an English sentence and we're asked to translate it into Latin, you will see all three of these possibilities mixed up in there. So be able to recognize them. So when you see something that says, he does praise, I know, which sounds awful, doesn't it? He does praise, really, he does. You need to recognize that all of that is a single word in Latin. Okay, so you need to be able to recognize that as a group, as a one word in Latin. Same with he is praising, okay? One word in Latin, laudat. He praises, two words here, one word in Latin. Okay, laudat. All three of those are laudat. So Latin is actually very simplistic when it comes to its verbs, much more so than English. And so you have to be very careful about all the different ways you can write it out in English when it's just one very simple word in Latin. There are some grammar cards associated with this lesson. So you'll notice that what are the two important takeaways? Basically, the verb agrees with the subject noun in person and number. And remember, for right now, this is always third. Okay, your choice is between it. Do I need to have a singular, he, she, or it verb, or do I need a plural, they? And then the second important thing, takeaway from this lesson, after all this information, is that the subject noun in a Latin sentence is put in the nominative case, all right? And just like in English, the order is going to be subject or nominative case and then verb. Okay. And in sentence diagramming, the subject in English always comes on the left side, and on the right side of a sentence diagram is the predicate of the sentence, and the predicate usually starts off with the verb. So if you're asked to diagram these sentences, you just write the English subject on the left and the verb on the right of the little, what is that, like a T, okay? Have a great day.